Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Life Health Show. I'm so excited about my next guest. I known her for a very long time, and her book really transformed my life because it really is just one of my favorite raw food books. I know I say that a lot, but this book really taught me a lot about health, and to this day, I still refer to it. This is Annie Jubb, everybody. Say hello, and hello, Annie. How are you?
I'm very well, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Annie, I've been down this path for a long time, but at the beginning, your book and your place and everything, your experience helped me so much. So, can you tell everybody a little about yourself and your past, and then we'll get into your current what you're doing now. But tell everybody about. Let's start off with yourself. You started eating raw foods. What got you into it, and where are you at today?
Yeah, I've been doing it for about 32 years. From like 85 on, I started getting into behavior physiology, and my partner at the time and I put together a program called Whole Brain Functioning. And it was kind of what Tony Robbins was doing. We all started out around the same time, like firewalking and just kind of getting to your best self, basically. And during that time, I noticed that everybody was getting progressively sicker. And all of a sudden, diabetes, obesity, adult onset diabetes were now seen in 18, 19, 20-year olds. Everybody's just kind of just not getting healthier. And that's what I had seen in my lifetime. I saw America getting healthier, and then all of a sudden it was going backwards. So I was like, well, what's going on there? What's the story with cancer? What's going on here? And I had a lot of friends who were doctors that I was working with, and nobody knew, but they were doing really drastic things like chemo and surgeries and removing body parts and all of that, but didn't really get to the core of what was causing it. So I did sort of a deep dive into it. And what I found, which is still valid, I wouldn't change a thing about it, is that during the 1980s, around 83, 4, 5, and 6, they changed all of the animal feed from grass and grazing animals to, genetically modified corn, basically, and soybeans. And then also, so all the people are eating that too. They're eating that second generation GMO corn and soybeans and getting really big too. All of a sudden, people were getting huge. And most people had, some kind of cancer coming up for them at their time at some time in their life. I don't think that's normal. So, and then I also looked at the human feed, and I was like, oh, well, we used to feed, all the junk food that Americans have eaten was at least cane sugar, right? And they had shifted all of that to high fructose corn syrup, and that was an immediate change that happened in a couple of years. So I said, okay, we've changed the food supply, and now we need to reverse that. So I went to India for a couple of months. I was studying, I was doing a yoga teachers training program there in 1990. And I really liked the vegetarian style, like the way it felt in my body. I like this couple thousand years of vegetarian culture that was there. And I really started studying Ayurvedic medicine and looking at, just being obvious, what are the obvious things going on here? So when I came back, I was doing a corporate training for the Aveda people, the body care line. I was doing a lot of corporate trainings at that time too, in whole brain functioning. And I mentioned that I was really, really looking for the cause of cancer. I was like, if you can know the cause, you can, figure out how to fix it. And one woman came up to me afterwards, and she said, there's a woman named Dr. Ann Wigmore, and she wrote this book called Diet for a Healthier Life or something. And it's a recipe book. And she turned around her, I think, ovarian or uterine cancer with using raw organic living foods. And I was like, what you say? So I pulled the book out and I started looking at it. I'd already booked a full season of trainings where people would come residentially and stay with me. I'd rent a ranch somewhere in Oklahoma or Hawaii or wherever. And I would have them on the ranch for, 8 days, and was teaching them the whole brain functioning, but I also had their food. I was controlling all their food too. So I was like, what would happen if? So I decided with the first I started eating that way myself. And I was like, I loved Dr. Ann's work, but I think she's a terrible chef. She was at the time. Her recipes were really hard to get in there and love. And she didn't like any herbs, which I couldn't understand because herbs are plants, and salt she didn't like. But I was like, there's good salt and bad salt. Sun-dried ocean water is just the perfect elixir for humans, and so on. Anyway, so before the training began, I rewrote all of these recipes, and I took a lot of my favorite recipes, and I fed it to everybody. I probably had like 35 people on the ranch, so you really got to see, people came from like Long Island and have these really Long Island accents like this, right? And I didn't realize it, but their sinuses completely shrank, and their accents kind of went away in 8 days. and they all got more beautiful, like their skin cleared up. Even people that were not classically beautiful, they had their skin looked beautiful at the end of the eyes were bright and shiny, and I thought, wow, I'm really onto something here. And then just started working with it, and it really outgrew my whole brain functioning work entirely, because if people are fighting for their health, they're not going to really go and do all this stuff to get them more motivated for this and that. They're really just trying to feel good in their body. They're trying to get well. So the life food, what I call life food nutrition, which is food that has a measurable life force in it. A lot of people call it raw foods, but I don't think that's enough of a definition. I want to see the radiant spectral of light coming through it and the life force there. And then I found that when I flood the body with these kind of foods, no matter what the person's condition is, they heal, they become well. And we do some tissue cleansing. So it's really become my thing. I reverse the conditions of degenerative diseases with raw organic living foods. It's been my way for decades now. And it works all the time, every time, no exceptions. I mean, some people, we're all going to die. Nobody's getting out of here alive, So if you got a really quick exit point, what we'll do is make a better death and a more beautiful death, But that's all I could ask for myself and for others too. But you can really, get people out of chronic pain also with nature, with living foods.
Yes.
And I
So
like to make it really tasty too, because I think part of life is the succulence and the deliciousness of it,
that's what I was going to say. So you took Ann Wigmore's philosophy of live foods and life food, and you made it more palatable and tasty, but kept the aspect of the life force to it. And that's different than what a lot of other raw food chefs had done, because they took our recipes and they made them taste better, but they killed the food. They killed the life force out of it, and they just went from live food to raw food, and there's a difference. And sprouting is one of them. Sprouting, fermenting, and then there's some other things that you've learned how to do to put that life force in it, and while tasting good. And I remember when I had your recipes, I felt a difference than just raw food recipes. Because there'd be one restaurant on one block that's doing raw food, and in your restaurant that had live food, and it did make a difference.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And that's your book talks about that. Now, I know you have several books, but the book I like to refer to, because it's one I picked up, and it's been great. Can you talk about that book a little and the information in there? Because I believe it's so important for people to understand the human body and how it works. And that book really covers a lot of that.
Absolutely. So the handbook is called LifeFood Recipe Book, Living on Life Force. And so really on the cover is a photograph taken with a Kirlian camera. So a Kirlian camera photographs the light coming out of any and every living thing. So an orange, a human being, a tree, anything that's a leaf, anything that's got life force, you can see the radiant spectrum around it, the aura, if you will. And up until they invented the Kirlian camera, people were talking about auras. Many people can see them and feel them. But here's a photograph of it, right? So that's what I mean by like measurable life force in it. There's got the light and the spectrum is coming out of it. So I wrote this book because I wanted to give people the handbook of how to take, just not just a salad, but like really like throw life into it, like make it something that's living, that's delicious. You can make a meal out of it. And at that time, I don't know if you remember back to the 90s, there were very few like dinner salads on a menu anywhere. There's like a little, you'd have some lettuce leaves and a couple slices of tomato. There was really very different kind of food sources. We didn't have any kombucha. We used to all make our own kombuchas all through the 90s. And then a couple of mavericks went out there and found a way to produce it. So we still had a living product. Basically, I just decided that part of my dharma and my life's work was to introduce this culinary experience, which it's reintroducing it really, because it's the very basic of, food of what we've always eaten. We've always been gatherers, Hunting requires an enormous amount of energy, but we've always gathered. And so to empower people with that too. So I also, in the book, and why I wrote the book too, is to describe my life food nutritional fast and my liver and gallbladder flush. So this is the foundation of how I work to reverse the conditions of degenerative diseases. So it's really flooding the body with blended foods, mostly because we just don't chew our food as well as we ought to. And, if you go to India, there's always some guy at the end of the table who's chewing it like 30, 40, 50 times. It should be a liquid when it goes in. And then that's kind of the secret. But when we in a modern world, we just don't take the time for it and everything. But throw everything in a Vitamix or juice things, and then you have it down so that it's very easy to assimilate. You can take all the vitamins and minerals in those foods and assimilate them. And plus, in fruits and vegetables, we find the most highly structured water on the planet. All of our drinking water today has traveled a long way to get to us, unless you live on a glacier somewhere. And that water is very structured when it's at the glacier stage, but it changes as it moves across the earth, and especially through pipes and things that are lead soldered and all of that. So the most highly structured water on the planet is in fruits and vegetables. So if we make fruits and vegetables the base of what we're consuming, then we'll be very hydrated. So there's sort of this water fanaticism going on in America today. And actually back then you couldn't even buy water. You could buy like a gallon of distilled water, but not like it is today where it's like this water and that water. I've got two right here, Perrier and Boss. But anyway, so there was really a need for this highly structured water to come back into the body. It's still today a very important need. Most of us are quite dehydrated. Most people that I work with that have any kind of a malady are like fundamentally dehydrated. And they might drink 6 to 8 glasses of water a day, but the water itself is less structured. And so it kind of moves and passes through the body. Whereas living water is, with the highly structured water that you find in fruits and vegetables, is the elixir of life, basically. It hydrates and plumps up the cells. It makes the body, the blood very slippery. Slippery blood is the foundation of good health. And then it also keeps mold, fungus, and yeast at bay, which is the beginning of all disease.
Absolutely. Now, the average person might not realize this, and I could be completely wrong, but is that picture behind you an artist's version of cells?
It is.
Look at that. Only a real Buddhist would know that. That's amazing. That looks great. So speaking of,
Yeah, and in fact, I wrote a book called Cell Rejuvenation with David, my ex-husband, and this artist did the cover for us with the cells, and he did this one for me. He was my boyfriend at the time,
yeah,
long after David and I had broken up.
speaking of cells, I mean, that's the key to everything is keeping the cells clean, keeps the body clean and vibrant. And so one of the things that you speak about a lot is fasting. Now, I know you talk a lot about uh, juice fasting and liquids and blending, which is so imperative. What about water fasting? Are you into water fasting as well, or are you really just talking about getting the nutrients with those least digestions needed?
Very good question. I prefer my clients to go on a nutritional fast because then I can really flood them with lots and lots of nutrient. It depends. So water fasting is a beautiful thing to do. It's a very spiritual thing to do. So my sister Mary, she's a wonderfully spiritual person who's dedicated her life to spirit-led endeavors, and she has like what she calls Holy Thursday, and she only does water on Thursdays, and it really has improved her overall health and well-being, but it's also accelerated her spiritual program, and that's what she was going there to for it basically. It's not for everybody. I like the nutritional fasting, and so when I say nutritional fasting, I mean all blended foods. So I do nut milk, raw soups, which are really great for getting everybody back on track very quickly. So it's like a gazpacho, but it's blended, you know. Nut milks, green juices. The green juice is just fantastic. Even if somebody does only one thing, I work with a lot of executives, and like they'll like just give me one thing. I'm like, if you do one green juice a day, like a 20 ounces of this green juice, like apple, cucumber, kale, and lemon, for example, it'll change your life. You'll sleep better at night from the extra magnesium. You'll have way more cognitive ability because the blood is more hydrated, less viscous. And it'll also, you know, most people are a little constipated too, so it really keeps the person very regular. So those things, an electrolyte lemonade, which is a beautiful lemonade with a little bit of salt, like living sea salt, and a little bit of oil, good flaxseed oil or something. So it's really like a little soap on the inside, you know. Oil and lemon makes like cleaning soap and cleans out the liver and the gallbladder really nicely. And then what else? I also do medicinal teas and things like that. I do a lot with botanicals, you know. But if I get that range into them, first of all, their palate is satiated because these are flavors that are supernatural. You know, I'm not doing anything but just nature in there. But I season things very, very well. I have a culinary flair, and I really care about the food looking beautiful. We eat with our eyes first, and then tasting really nourishing and well. So at the end of the meal, you feel like I didn't, you know, like most people are like, oh, I had to suffer when I was dieting or whatever. No, this you feeling like I'm getting my palate really satiated. I feel like I hit all the nutritional notes, I'm digesting it really, really, really well, because that's a big part of nutrition is how well do I digest this food? That's part of chewing and blending. And then how well is it eliminated too? Am I having regular bowel movements, and does it come easily and effortlessly for me to move through the body? So in that way, I can reverse anything actually. I mean, I haven't found anything that didn't really work. I just worked with a client who I've known for many years. She's an actress, and she had a booster shot of these vaccines in February. And about 2 weeks later, which is kind of that ab reaction, she had a mysterious autoimmune disease that came up. She was in incredible pain until I met with her about 2 months ago. She couldn't sit down, she couldn't sleep, couldn't exercise. So she looked terrible. You look gaunt and you can't sleep like that. And I worked with her. I said, I want you out of pain in the first couple of days. I'm going to put you on a massively anti-inflammatory diet. Mine is non-inflammation anyway, but then there's those really great anti-inflammatory foods like onion, ginger, garlic, peppers. And so every soup I made a base of ginger water with her. I took a heroic amount of ginger and a couple of cloves of garlic, put it in a few cups of water, blend it, strain it, and that's the base of the soup. That's instead of just water or nut milk or something, it's the base. That's the base. And in 3 days, she started exercising again that night. The next morning, she woke up pain free. I did a 14-day program with her with a liver and gallbladder flush, one of my signature flushes. And she just texted me. She's traveling the world now and she's feeling really good and it's still holding. So once we knock it out and the body gets a new set point of anti-inflammatory, which should be the normal state, right? Then it holds because the body is a perfect self-correcting mechanism.
Now, on yourself, I know you applied much of this yourself, and for 15 years you're on 100% raw vegan diet.
Mhm.
And where's your diet currently at now, and how's your health right now?
I'm in excellent health. My diet's really good. I mean, I don't like to give it percentages or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of day. I'm a very high raw, I guess they say. But I eat some animal foods now too. I mean, one of the like I always thought I would be a vegetarian for the rest of my life. I thought that's going to be my sweet spot. It always felt really good to me. But then around about the year 14 or 15 years into it, I was also going through a very difficult time in my life, a lot of challenging times and whatever. Anyway, so but I'm a vivid dreamer. I've kept a dream journal since I was 12, so I write my dreams down every morning when I wake up. And every day for 2 years, I dreamt of eating eggs, like cracking raw eggs open into my mouth. And it really grossed me out, and I didn't want to do it. But then I was having problems with my gums and teeth as well. And so eventually I started to incorporate some eggs into my diet, and I get, really happy hens and this type of a thing. So yeah, I eat some eggs now. I eat a little bit of everything. But most days I eat really high raw. I always try to get a green juice into me, or I always have a big thing of nut milk in my refrigerator. I make a lot of dehydrated snacks and treats. I just made a red pepper pate. We smear it on a nori cracker and dehydrate it. It's like the best.
So now, yeah,
Yeah.
when you were doing all raw, where are you with blood work? Do you check people's blood work and make sure, like, when you're working with people, like, their blood work is okay, or do you focus on that?
Yeah, and more now. So it's more common now to be able to order a blood work for people. And so, I have clients all over the world, and especially people with, in Canada or the European people. I'll say, can you just run get a blood draw and give me a hormone panel, and we have to see where you're at with things, or your albumin levels or whatever. But I read physiognomy. I bit of a medical intuitive. I can really kind of see and I can hear people's voices. I know kind of what the timbre is and stuff, and I'm pretty accurate with it. But I like all the information too, so I don't always need it, but sometimes, especially for kind of stickler cases where maybe they're not giving me all the information anyway, then I can back it up with blood work.
And so what notice did you personally feel, negative or positive, in a different way? You've been dreaming for eggs for about 2 years. You were all raw vegan, and then you ate the eggs. Was it just like, oh, I've satisfied my dream, or did you all of a sudden have a burst of energy, or did you notice any difference or lack of energy? How was the whole situation?
I had a real hard time digesting them, to be honest. And I tried it first on a farm in Italy, and my friends were like, this is the place. If you're going to eat an egg, this is the one. I didn't have any digestive enzymes with me. And that was the thing, because if you raw vegan for a long time, you don't have the digestive enzymes for protein, animal proteins like that. So I tried it maybe, a few months apart, like 5 times over the first year, and couldn't keep it down. It felt good to eat it, but couldn't keep it down. Then I started taking digestive enzymes with it, and it was fine, absolutely fine. So whenever I crave, and I'm funny with it too. Like I'll have a craving for it, and I'll get some pastured eggs, but then if I miss that little window, it might be another couple weeks before I feel it again. So I'll either buy fresh eggs or have the ones on hand.
Now, when you work with your clients, I know you were saying the best, highest structured water is in the fruits and vegetables. Do you always put them on a strict vegan diet, or for some clients?
No,
Okay, so
no, very few people are actually vegan, or can stick to it for a longer period of time.
well, I mean
I
during your
do.
cleansing week that you're with them. I mean,
Oh yes, that's raw vegan. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's all blended foods too. No cooked food, no alcohol, no, just clean it up. Let's have a totally clean window here. And they always feel amazing. And what happens too is then they get clicked into it to continue forward with these. They'll get their green juices. They'll learn how to make a nut milk. I mean, it's 5 ingredients. It's not rocket science. And make your just to have more like on hand. I was talking to a client today, and I said, well, my favorite snack is raw almonds and dulse. And she said, what's dulse? And it's the tastiest of all the seaweeds, because she was having some hormonal things. She's going into perimenopause. I said, sea vegetables are your best
it's
friend.
amazing how like nori sheets are like you can buy them everywhere and kids are eating them. It's really amazing. That's just blows my mind. They you go to the store and it's like a snack. They're eating nori sheets. It's like wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of this has gotten in the vernacular from the work that we've done, just pushing, 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 keep introducing it. And it all does. This is where trickle down does work. If you
Yes.
keep setting a high enough, standard, and people have a taste and experience, a sensory experience of it, then they want to go out and do more of the same.
What are one or two things or some things that you were doing back then that you thought were amazing, but then you realized, whoa, this isn't as good as I thought it is. I better stop. Was there any, did you run into any issues or anything that you said, well, I changed my mind about this?
It's funny because it's kind of held up over time. And in fact, the AMA has caught up with me. A friend of mine was at a doctor's conference, where they were talking about the microbiome. Oh, it's a new thing, and stuff. And she writes me, she goes, they're blathering on about the microbiome that you were talking about for 30 years, so it's catching up. It's actually, I don't know if there's anything where we were off the mark, because it's really just nature. And if you look at how things work, and just stick with nature and don't try to change it too much, just keep with the natural program. Nature teaches us well. And the microbiome, I love that they're going now. You have like biome and places where you can send a little sample in, and they can really track your all the bacteria's in there. And it's becoming a part of medicine now, where I can go in with a client and talk to the doctors about the microbiome, and here's what we're doing, we're building this up. And even antibiotic abuse, which has been rampant for 40, 50 years, it was the only trick that they had to kill off bad bacteria, or harmful bacteria rather. Now they're realizing too, so they're actually giving probiotics to patients in hospitals that they have on an IV drip antibiotic. It's nowhere near enough. It's not the end point. But I just got one of my clients who had gone through a terrible C. diff infection that she caught in the hospital when she was on intravenous antibiotic, which really did save her life, a good life-saving thing. But then afterwards, she came home with this really harsh bacteria called C. diff that is really, really difficult to get rid of. A molecule can live for 5 months outside of the body on a shelf surface. So the hospitals are riddled with it. They need to start cleaning with ozone, and that will be the end of these kind of bacteria, SARS and all of this. It'll be the end of it. But in the meantime, they didn't. So she tried every single thing that her doctor had done, her enterologist and the bacteriologist specialist and stuff. And then I said, well, okay, what we need to do now is the thing we really should have started with, which is the fecal implant. And when you understand the microbiome, then you'll understand this technology. Luckily, it's in the hospitals now, not every hospital, but I was able to get her into a hospital in Seattle, which is not too far from where she lives. And she's getting the fecal implant, and it's a one and done. And she suffered since last December with this terrible C. diff, which is awful. Really rips up the intestine and all of that too. So there's, it's not an easy sell at first, but I've been talking about it for 10 or 15 years. And now it's in the vernacular. Now it's in the hospitals. And now doctors are not every doctor, but many doctors are understanding the life-saving value of reintroducing somebody else's healthy bacteria, because there's so many different strains. We haven't even begun to isolate most of them. And until we do, this is a shortcut to it and life-saving.
Sure, sure. So for your own life and your own health and energy, what is your daily pattern? Like how many hours a night do you sleep?
I love sleep. I love to dream too. So I'm a solid 8, sometimes 9. It depends on what I'm doing. I'm a sleep stacker. So if I have a real busy period of time, I can go on like 5, 6 hours of sleep for a period of time. And then I'll get like a couple of 12 hours in a row and get caught up. And it rests my brain. I'm a big thinker. I think outside the box all the time. So for me, I really need that rest time. But I go for a run. I had a knee injury 2 months ago, so I haven't been able to run for 2 months. It's really been really hard for me. But I hike. Back to hiking now. I do a yoga class probably 5 days a week. I really do study yoga very in depth. One of the most interesting things I did over this last year was I really took a year off to heal myself, like different things. I had trauma when I was younger, and I got really trauma triggered about a year ago. And I thought, wow, I thought I dealt with that. I thought it was all done, you know? And so I worked through that, got over it and stuff. And I thought, I'm always a therapist to everybody else. Like maybe I should, do a little therapy. And I did this IFS therapy once a week where you get to know your parts. Dick Schwartz's program is called Internal Family System. Not a great name for it because it's really revolutionary. But anyway, so I did a year of therapy, and then I kind of came into a bit of a windfall. So I'd always been wanting to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I wanted to do this program to mimic this study that they did in Israel. And that's what I did. So they did a 2-hour hyperbaric program with a group of people that were age 65 to almost 90. They were elderly people, not elderly at 65, but you know what I mean. And it's the telomeres lengthening study. So they did 62-hour treatments within 90 days. And there's a little bit of a thing. You have an oxygen mask on, plus you're there under pressure. And it was phenomenal. What they found after the 3 months, with these 60 sessions in 3 months, that every single person in the study tested all their biomarkers were 25 years younger. And it really worked for me too. I had reading glasses. My vision was back to 2020 within like a month. I was sleeping a lot too. If you look at the MRIs of the brain of the person before and after, you really grow your brain back because the brain shrinks, during just regular living, but also if you live near a roadway and you're breathing alcohol or what do you call them, petrol fumes, or if you drink alcohol or whatever like that, it just kind of shrinks the brain. So it grows the brain back. I feel like my frontal cortex just grew my brain back in a really
Wow.
cool way. And I do a lot of stuff for brain health anyway. I do, but I really noticed a benefit.
Now, when you stopped doing that, did it go back to the way it was, or everything stayed much better?
I feel like my telomeres are still much more youthful than they were. My vision held for about 4 months, and now it's like sometimes I use, especially with not great light, I'll use glasses. But what it's made me want to do is to kind of, for my next gig, actually this house I just moved into is quite large, and I'm going to bring in an infrared sauna because I love that. But then also you can rent hyperbaric chambers, not the big, huge, solid ones that I did my work in, this research work. But you can rent them for a couple $100 a month, and you can do your own.
Yeah, you could buy the soft ones now. They're not that expensive.
They're really inexpensive. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do, because now that I know how effective it is, and no kidding, your skin just looks so great. You feel so good in your body. I slept 12 hours a night during that entire 3 months that I was doing it. So like that sleep regeneration, I feel like I really reversed the condition of aging, quite a bit. Just in the way you feel, and, other markers too, vision and exercise, or just overall energy level and brain processing styles. I
Sure.
feel good.
So a few more questions for you. So one of the things that I have used and helped people with in healing is amazing anti-inflammatory called astaxanthin, which is it's a red algae. Have you had any experience with that? Because I find it to be amazing.
Absolutely. Well, the red pigments are so great to help us, like, ward off any kind of EMF waves and things like that. And all algae is magical. Algae has a foot in the animal kingdom and in the vegetable kingdom. It's one of the few things that straddles that range. So those protein chains are very long and complex that break down easily into single amino acids in the body. Yeah, I love it, and it's beautifully anti-inflammatory too. So different foods work for different people, right? We all have a little bit different constitution, and I love the red pigments, especially this algae, because of people are, most of us are actually in front of screens. We're in front of a screen right now, and
Yeah,
so that really helps us to deal with it. Those red pigments really help us with the EMFs.
absolutely. Well, your website has your books on there, and your website, I'm going to put it below the video, is anniejubb.com, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to put the spelling and the link right below this window for all of you to connect, and I highly recommend uh, the books that have recipes in them, and all the books. The information is amazing. But is there anything you want to say out there to that person that is just not sure what to do with their health, and they're not feeling great? Like, what advice would you give them?
You can just pick one beautiful thing. You don't have to do everything. Just one beautiful thing. If you like green juices, just go out of your way to get a green juice. If you don't really like, you don't think that you like fruits and vegetables, but you do. There's something in there that you do. You like a pear or you like a peach. There's all these kinds of orchard fruits that are going off right now too. And I encourage people to kind of adopt a plant. You know, I have love affairs with them. Sometimes it's apples. I'll have an apple every day. you know, right now we're coming into pear season, so it's going to be pears for me for a little while. And just sort of fall in love with some of these plants because there's an energy to them, there's a generosity to it, and it will seed your future love for more fruits and vegetables. And that's really the key to life, and that's the key to keeping young and fit all your life.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, everybody, get to Annie's website, and it's been so great after all these years to catch up with you. And
Mm.
everybody in the audience, put your comments or questions below, and I will answer your questions. And until then, everybody, thank you, Annie. Thank you so much for your time.
So good to see you again, Paul.
Yes,
Take care, mate.
thank you, thank you. Okay.
Mhm.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.